Hi and welcome. Today I will be talking about Threadlocker. Briefly put, Threadlocker is an adhesive or a special kind of glue that is used to prevent nuts and bolts from loosening due to vibrations and other effects. In this video I will explain in more detail what Threadlocker is and what kinds of Threadlockers exist. Then I will show how it is used and I will briefly discuss whether you really need to use it for bicycle and other kinds of works, maintenance, mechanics and whatnot. So let us begin. First, the idea for making this video came from visiting shops around my city, and when I was asking about Threadlocker, most salespeople were looking at me as if I were looking for some part for assembling spaceships or for some super glue or some other kind of glue, but most had no idea what this is. Even the shop where I bought this had no idea what they were selling. Okay, so again, now what Threadlocker is. Threadlocker is an adhesive that is put on threads of nuts or bolts or both, and it does the following things. It prevents them from loosening due to vibrations, as we will demonstrate in a minute, and it also prevents any moisture from coming into the connection between the nut and the bolt, so it also can prevent any galvanic corrosion and things getting stuck and rusted together. So it's good for both sealing from water intrusion and air intrusion, and from preventing bolts from working themselves loose due to vibrations. When we talk about Threadlockers, they are not like ordinary glues. There are different models and different manufacturers, but most of them, I would say, most work in such a way that when you apply them onto a metal nut or bolt, my backpack just fell off. Okay, when you apply them to a nut or a bolt, they will get in contact with metal, and as long as there is air, they will not begin to cure. Or if we put a more casual term, they will not begin to dry out, even though there are some dry Threadlockers. Anyway, they will not begin to grip as long as there is also air. So they need to come in contact with some metal and to be in a place where there is no air, which happens when you screw a bolt in, and when you press it tightly, then there is no more air and Threadlockers start to cure. You can work them in the first 30 minutes up to an hour. After that, if you continue moving them for whatever reason, then you will sort of mess things up. They will not cure as properly, but you will also notice that it doesn't go very easily anymore. And in about 24 hours you can be certain that it's completely cured and that what it can do, it has started doing. 3 hours is a bare minimum, but I think 24 hours for most models and makes is a safe bet. Okay, so that is basically, I will show how they are applied and how they are used in a minute. First, to explain what kind of Threadlockers there are. A very basic division is that some come like dripping, so they are like liquid. Here I hope you can see this in the camera. This one is liquid, and there are also some that look like those lip sticks, so they are semi-dry, semi-hard, and you can either of those you apply on threads or not, only using different methods. Of course, you can drip this, and the other one you have to smear. And there are basically 3 different strengths. There are the weak ones, the weak strength, medium strength, and strong. One of the most famous manufacturers of Threadlocker liquids and lipsticks is called Loctite. I think it's owned by Henkel, a German company, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they have color coding. Most of their tubes are red colored. Primary color is red, but they have different colored marks and different colored liquid. This one is blue, as you can see, and Loctite makes purple, that one is marked usually by series 220 something, 222 and so on. I'm mentioning this because you're most likely to see that being widely used, and they should have a worldwide availability, even though they are not available in my country in shops at the moment of recording this. Serbia. Anyway, so they have the purple one that is low strength, they have blue one that is medium strength, and they have red one. The blue one is 240 something, 243 model or 241 or 2, no, I'm not quite sure, but 240 something is the series. They have different variances, but that's about it. The blue one, and the red one is the high strength, 262, 271 and similar, so over 260. What is the difference? Well, the weakest ones, like purple Loctite, they help prevent prevent bolts from loosening, but they do not provide a huge amount of locking strength. The blue, the medium strength ones they will provide more problems for loosening due to vibrations, but they are still relatively easy for parts to disassemble. The red one is very strong, and if you use it on smaller nuts and bolts like we often see with bicycles, so M5 threads or M4 threads, even worse, you might have problems to unscrew them without heating them up. You might see that the threads get damaged or the interface gets damaged. So as a rule of thumb, if you are not using a hex key larger than 6 millimeters, so 7, 8 and so on, 7 is quite rare, but 8 and so on, you generally don't want to use the red or the high strength thread locker. They can be disassembled without heating up, as far as I know, but it is recommended to heat things up and then it goes easier. But I would not recommend them for bicycles or anything. For bicycles, the purple one is, I think, probably the best idea, and if you can't find that one, you can use the blue one and not go crazy with it when you're applying it. So that is the basics. And now first, to answer the question, do you really have to use that? In my opinion, any assemblies that require the use of thread locker are not well designed, and both engineers or manufacturers should have done their homework better. We can see that when we talk about bicycle disc mounts. I will make that video pop up in your top right hand corner where I discuss various disc mounts, but for the 6-bolted disc mount, most manufacturers will recommend the use of thread locker because they don't believe the system is secure enough without any glue holding the bolts in place. I've managed to, I almost never use thread lockers with bicycles. Even for those discs, I apply some mounting paste and put maybe some washers and apply appropriate torque, and I haven't had problems. But if you want to sleep on the safe side, and if you will not be checking on those bolts ever, so you're building a bicycle for someone who's not very experienced with mechanics, it's a safe bet to use the thread locker as recommended and call it a day, purple or blue one. Now, my preferred methods for preventing bolts from unscrewing is if I can use these like plastic nuts that have a plastic washer inside. This is the other end. It's normal, but here they have this like a plastic insert. Nuts that are like this cannot easily be unscrewed or screwed on for that matter. So here I can try to screw it on by hand, and here once this has come to the part where there is plastic sleeve, I can no longer do it easily. I have to use a wrench and continue screwing it on, and the advantage is that they don't get unscrewed. They will keep being difficult to turn until they are completely screwed off. So that works very well. If I am not able to do this, for example, I'm using a bolt that goes directly into something, so I don't have a nut on the other end, then I use one of these like cutout washers or spring washer, I'm not sure what the name is. So they have this like a spring that you compress when you tighten the bolt, and that does two things. First, these ends bite into the material to prevent things from moving, unscrewing, and they provide some extra preload. So I will always, if I cannot use one of these nuts, then I put one of these washers, and for aluminum or carbon frame or other softer materials that are not steel, I put a simple flat washer after the split washer to prevent the split washer from creating any cuts in aluminum, which is relatively soft, or in carbon fiber, God forbid. So that is another method that often does the job, at least for bicycles and similar stuff. I think my bench vise is also held in place by that method, and I didn't need to retighten it in spite of hammering it and everything. So that is one method, but if that fails, you can use some thread locker. Manufacturers recommend using thread locker for V-brake bolts, and they often come with pre-applied that dry thread locker that starts working once you screw it in. So here it is. Once you screw it in and there's no air, it starts to cure. This blue section, that is the thread locker. So I don't have any problems without using it. I put a lot of mounting paste and screw things in, and if you apply appropriate torque, you will have no problems with it coming loose. At least I've never had, but if you want to sleep better, to be on the safe side, you can use thread locker. How do you use thread locker? Well, the first thing is to make sure that everything is clean, no dust and no oil or grease. So you can use some 90+% alcohol for cleaning it with some cloth that is clean, or use some brake cleaner. So to make sure that everything, both the bolts and nuts and wherever the bolt is screwed into, is clean and free of any oil or grease. And then you will apply a little bit of thread locker at the place where the nut will come, or where the bolt will screw in. For example, if I wanted to hold these two in place and wanted to use thread locker, I would measure how far this section is, the beginning of this is from the end. Here it's about, let's measure it, about 18 millimeters, 17.95. So I could take it out, or if it is like this that I can see it on the other end, then I would first put it through and then place some one drop of thread locker onto the threads before I screw on a nut. So here is what that would look like. Here it is. One drop is usually enough. If you want it to make a good seal from air, to prevent any air from coming in or anything like that, then you can go a bit crazy and lubricate it all around, but that's usually an overkill. Also, bear in mind that this will flow and get spread as you screw things in, so it will work its way a bit. So if you have a longer engagement of a bolt, you can put it just past the starting section of the bolt, not at the very tip. You leave the first few of these threads clean so that you can start easily, but then after that section you can apply, like someplace here, a drop of thread locker, and that should do the job. This in this case I was really applying it very liberally for demonstrative purposes only. You don't need to put a lot of it. It will do the job. That is how you apply it. Then you tighten to the specified torque and you wait for it for 24 hours to cure. If you leave it in the open air or if you don't put it on metal parts, it generally does not cure and it will not start holding things together. So, in order to experiment and to demonstrate, here I have an old fork, and this one was tightened to the torque of 6 Newton meters using mounting paste on the threads to make sure that it doesn't get stuck or rusted or anything. I left this for a few days, so not a few years, but a few days. And the other side was also tightened to 6 Newton meter torque, but I used a very liberal amount of Threadlocker, this blue one from Bison, and this one is generally considered to not be permanent, not that high strength one, so they say you can unscrew things without any heating up or any special treatment. So what I want to show now is how difficult it is to unscrew the one that is glued, that has thread locker, compared to the other one where you will see as soon as I loosen it, I will be able to move it by hand, not the other one. And I also want to measure the torque needed to start unscrewing both of these. So let's see. I have no idea how much torque this will take. This is experiment for me as well, so I will first set this to 5 Newton meters. I hope you can see, and try to unscrew this. I need to set it to measure torque for unscrewing. Okay, this is generally not advisory to do with the torque wrench, but here for educational purposes only. Let's see if this will move. No, as expected. All right, let's see the other one. Here, I managed to unscrew it with just 5 Newton meters of torque, and as you can see, I can then start unscrewing it by hand. Here it is, the mounting paste. Now, what about this one? Let's try 10 Newton meters. No, still not making it. Okay, let's try 15. I will use this torque wrench for 15 Newton meters. Here, placing this. And let's see if we'll manage to get this moving. Okay. Here, 15 Newton meters is what it took to get this moving. I didn't want to do it too gradually. Maybe I would have made it with 12 or something, but so a lot greater torque was required. And another interesting thing that we will now try to demonstrate, if I manage to remove this at all, ever. If anyone knows where I can get 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch bead socket in high quality, preferably deliverable to Serbia adapter, please let me know in the comment sections below, especially if it won't cost me an arm and a leg. Now I want to see if I can continue unscrewing this with a torque of just over 2 Newton meters. So let's see how much torque this takes. Okay. Here, it will not go at 2 Newton meters, even though I had started unscrewing it. Let's try 4 Newton meters. Here, with 4 Newton meters, it's going. So the one with applied mounting paste was easy to unscrew with 5 Newton meters, and I could easily unscrew it after that by hand with less than 1 Newton meter of torque. But here I need is over 2 Newton meters in order to keep the nut unscrewing. So even after it's been loosened, it is still not unscrewing. Here this is 3 Newton meters. It just about goes, but not as easily. Here I can unscrew it by almost I can now try to unscrew it by almost a turn. Let's do that. Okay, you can see it is being unscrewed, but it is still going with great difficulty. So 2 Newton meter torque, or just over 2 Newton meters, still doesn't cut it. Okay, now it does, but it is definitely going a lot more difficult that I cannot turn it by hand. So that is one of the advantages of using thread locker. If you cannot use those nylon nuts that I've shown at the beginning of the video, then thread locker will prevent bolts from easily or nuts from easily loosening all the way. So that is their main advantage, and whether that is a good idea to use on every nut and bolt, I don't think it's necessary. I prefer using anti-seize paste to prevent things from being rusted together, but I want to be able to later remove any bolts and nuts easily, freely, and if I tighten them to a proper torque, specified torque, I'll put a link to my article listing most common bicycle parts tightening torques. Anyway, so if you tighten it to a specified torque, you will not have problems with bolts coming loose all on their own. So that is the main advantage of using thread locker. So I hope I've explained everything. If you have any comments or questions, please use the comment section below. And as far as I'm concerned, this model of thread locker, Bison, I will put it closer to the camera. I think it's good enough. It does the job. In my country, it is available and it is not super expensive, while a Loctite was only available on mail order, and here it cost several times more, at least from what the prices I could find. So I hope that my countrymen watching this video will let me know if there are any cheaper alternatives. This cost about $6 for this 10 milliliter package, and it does the job and lasts and doesn't dry out very quickly. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in some other video. Cheers!